Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. Stephanie, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back for another weekly conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Ciera Burch. Ciera is the author of the young adult novel, Something Kindred, and the middle grade novel, Finch House. She's here today to talk about her newest middle grade novel, Camp Twisted Pine. It's a spooky novel about a girl whose first summer camp experience takes a bit of a scary turn. It has so many entry points for so many readers, and I have so much I want to talk about it with her. So let's get right to it. Ciera, welcome to the KidLit Love podcast. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here too.
Ah, wonderful. Well, I've got to say that I think you have the best short bio on your website that I've seen of an author in a long time. And here it is: writer, reader, ice cream lover.
Yeah, it's pretty much my personality at once.
I love it. And I would love for you to start there. Can you give us a little bit longer bio of you and your journey as a writer, and maybe throw in your favorite ice cream flavor too?
Sure, of course. So I'm Ciera. I, of course, am a children's author. I write YA and middle grade. No picture books yet, but you never know. Maybe, maybe one day.
The power of you.
Yes, exactly. I am an ice cream lover and a reader and a writer, but I'm also a big plant mom, and a D&D player, which is my latest obsession. Um, been writing since I learned how to write, and telling stories even before then. Chatting way too much to my mom, probably. And yeah, writing and reading has sort of been my whole little bubble growing up, and it just expanded as I got older, which has been really lovely. Oh, and my favorite ice cream, it's usually like a mint chocolate chip, but lately I'm gonna have to say it's been like strawberry cheesecake. There's a really good one from Haagen-Dazs. Yeah, I love it.
That sounds so good. I live in upstate New York, and we have this
Oh,
kind of chain of convenience stores. It's just Stewart's Shops, and they have the best ice cream, and they have a mint cookie crumble, which is so good
ooh.
that you would probably love. They have the best fall flavors for this time of year too, with apple and pumpkin, and oh, I'm getting
My
hungry.
brother goes to college in upstate New York, so this feels like an excuse to to visit.
That's right, road trip and give the ice cream a try. So, like you, many of us who are listening loved being in our own reading and writing bubble as we were growing up. But not all of us took the path to published author and children's literature author. So I'm wondering what was that, I guess, calling, or what was the thing that you thought, okay, this book, I'm going to do this, and this is where I'm headed.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had so many like false starts and stops. Like as a teenager, I knew it was like very much something that I wanted to do. I grew up in sort of like, I guess, sort of renaissance, you could say, the first big boom of like YA. And so, I was devouring those books as a teenager and I was like, oh yes, like I absolutely want to do this. And then when it was time to go to college, I was like, well, I don't know if I can actually make a living from writing. Like this feels like a bad like choice. And I'm like an older oldest daughter, like, and I like to be very responsible and very type A. So I'm like, okay, like I need to do something like more quote unquote serious. And so I went to college for international relations um,
That is
in
serious.
DC. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, I don't actually like this. I don't wanna do do any of this." And I quickly pivoted because I was like, "Okay, I can write. I can still be sort of serious." So then I changed my major to, like, communications and journalism, and then I also quickly realized this isn't the type of writing that I wanted to do. This is not fun for me. And luckily, my college I went to American University, they had like you have to take a certain amount of gen eds. And so I was able to take a creative writing class. And when I was in there, that was my first ever like actual creative writing class. Before I just been writing for fun, like with friends or writing fan fiction. And in that class, like something my brain just lit up and it was like, oh. And my professor was a novelist and of course she was also a professor, but she wrote books. I was like, okay, I can actually do this. So I finally switched to literature and my mom was like, "Oh, well, you should have just did that in the first place because obviously that's what you want to do." But the whole time I'd been worried that she would think that that was something like superfluous, you know? But she didn't because she's my mom and she's known me my whole life and the things that I'm interested in. And so from there, quickly, I was like, "Okay, I want to do this, and this is what I'm going to do." I ended up applying to grad school, which I hadn't intended to do before, to get my MFA, and I was really lucky to get a full fellowship and so I was able to do that in Boston and I had some really great like advisors and everything. And from there, like from internships and jobs that I had, eventually it was like, okay, I'm gonna, buckle down and get serious and try to make this a thing. And I was lucky enough to like get an agent after using my thesis as my submission. And from there it's been really fast and great and very strange still.
That's awesome. Well, everybody lately, I feel like at least the people that I listen to, podcasts and personal development books, it's all about just figuring out what you want to do and then actually letting yourself do it. And then when you do, stuff just kind of lines up. And it seems like your mom knew all along this might be where you were ending up. But once you decided, the dominoes just fell in such a wonderful way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just getting past the like fear and uncertainty and all the sort of what ifs in my way to actually try and do something that I was really passionate about um, really made it so, a path sort of opened up, which has been really nice. And I still have a lot of those, fears and what ifs, but I just kind of try to skirt around them.
Yeah. Do it anyway.
Exactly. Do it scared.
Yes. Yes. Well, and so doing it scared has gotten you book 1, book 2, and now this is book 3, right? Camp Twisted Pine, what we're talking about
Yes.
today.
Yeah, exactly. Book three, my second middle grade. Yeah, been wild journey to have so many books in such a short amount of time, for sure.
Yeah. It was meant to be.
Yeah, my mom would say the same thing.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about Camp Twisted Pine. There are so many things that I want to talk to you about in this book because there are so many layers. And I gave a little sneak peek to it in the introduction. It is a spooky novel. There are some interesting things going on. It's set at a summer camp. It is the main character's first go around at a summer camp, doesn't quite know if she wants to be there. And things happen. Interesting,
They
spooky
do.
things happen. I would love for you to tell us in your words where the inspiration came from for Camp Twisted Pine and give listeners a little sneak peek into it if they haven't picked it up yet.
Sure. So growing up, I really wanted to go to summer camp. Like, I was a big Percy Jackson fan, and they have Camp Half Blood, and I was like, well, I have to go to a summer camp. Like, it's not going to be Camp Half Blood, but I desperately need to go to a summer camp. And my mom said no. And every time I asked, she said no. And so I never got to go to summer camp. But in sixth grade, we had like this class wide field trip that was a week long and I'm from New Jersey, so we went to the Jersey Pine Barrens, which I had never been to before then. And it's kind of like your typical, it's like a protected area in New Jersey that's very huge. I don't want to get the number wrong, but it's something like 100 to 200 acres of like protected land in marshland. And so we got to go there and we stayed there for a week. We weren't allowed to have any electronics. Back then we had cell phones, but like not the cell phones of today.
Flip phone.
Um, yeah, exactly. I think that was when I had like a pink razor. I thought it was like the coolest thing. But we got to stay in cabins and, like, it was like the full summer camp experience, and we went on night hikes, and I sort of fell in love with it, and I was like, "Wow," like, New Jersey sort of gets a bad rap in, like, in all of the states, but it's actually, like, a really great place, and that was the first I got to experience, like, more nature out of New Jersey rather than growing up, like, in the suburbs or any sort of cities, and I really fell in love with it. And of course, the Jersey Devil is New Jersey's cryptid, and so that like was the center of all our bonfire stories and like spooky stories. And a lot of like some of the teachers used it too to like deter us from going out at night out of our cabins when we weren't supposed to. And then in terms of Camp Twisted Pine, yeah, Naomi is not happy to be going, unlike me, who was very eager. She's not happy to be going to a summer camp. She much prefers to stay indoors and like get all of her nature experience from books with her friends in a little sort of nature club that they have where they don't like to be outside. And but she's also very, type A, very responsible eldest sister, and she feels sort of like the glue holding her family apart, especially since her parents are sort of going through some of their own problems. And yeah, when she gets to Camp Twisted Pine, she sort of falls into this crisis that's happening that nobody else really notices or will listen to her about. And she's very reluctant. She doesn't want to be part of things. Um, and she's also dealing with her first crush on one of her cabin mates for the first time. So she has quite a lot going on. Um, in the middle of the woods where she's not excited to be, I would say.
Yeah. So you kind of gave a hint. We don't give spoilers, so I'm so glad you didn't give spoilers on there. But I mentioned in the introduction, I feel like there are so many different layers to this
Mhm.
story that a reader could jump into. We've got that first, I don't want to say obvious layer, but to many readers, they will want to pick this up because there is a spookiness to it. There is some magicalness to it. There is some scariness, appropriate scariness to it as well. And readers will gravitate there. But then there's also the family element where readers might find themselves there. There's the friendship element where they might find themselves there. There's also, I think, where I know I would have done this as a child, reading this book, but I know as an adult I did it too. Um, the personality of Naomi is, okay, do I have a voice and when can I say it? And am I allowed to say it? And how does it feel when I don't versus when I do? You just have so many different wonderful things stacked on top of each other in a way that just makes you get so involved in the story. And I
Oh,
know
thank you.
the you're very welcome. The maybe spookiness part was I now can see, based on your own experiences, those stories that you heard. Um, but I'm wondering, and this is a really loaded question, but it's one that as a reader, I thought this is what I really want to ask is how? How did you take that kind of spooky thread through and then weave in family, friendship,
Mm.
changes? Do you know, or did you know, I guess, when you set out to write the book, okay, this is what's going to happen, and I kind of plotted out? Or did all of those elements just kind of reveal themselves as you write? I'm always so curious about how that happens and a writer just so seamlessly blends so much together.
Oh, so I'm like what they call a plantser. Like I'll have like a plot and like an outline, but usually when I'm writing, so much of it changes. And I think a good part of that is because I'm a very character-based and character-driven writer. And so everything stems from the characters for me. So I knew so Naomi sort of just showed up in my brain very solidly, very much as she is. And so I knew when writing her, just her interactions with different people, with her parents, her brothers, her new cabin mates, like how that was going to affect the trajectory of things. And she sort of guided me in that. Okay, like this is how she feels about her mom and about her dad and her responsibility over her brothers. And it was very interesting, especially with her personality, because in the book she struggles so much with um, saying what she wants to say or asking questions and trying not to be sort of meddlesome or in a way that's very against her nature. But with me, as the writer, she was very sort of forthcoming, but not even as much as you would think. So I had to play around with writing different scenes or different plot points to sort of draw that out of her, like her reactions. And it was fun because I discovered a lot of different things about her, and some of her reactions to things changed how I planned to have like either certain reveals or even certain plot points. And so that was really fun, especially with her, because my other characters, like Micah and Finchhouse, is a lot more brave and like brash and outgoing. So to have this character was a really fun experience, especially putting her in this environment where there aren't very many adults at all.
Right, right. Head counts, right? How many kids
Yeah,
are there? That was something that came back.
exactly.
And again, no spoilers, but head counting in this situation is very important at a summer camp where there aren't a whole lot of
Yeah.
us walking walking around. But that really did stand out to me. And I know readers take away whatever they need from a book at the time that they read it. Um, and I wanted to share this one, it's not one quote, it's actually two sentences that I think so beautifully captures her personality and then gratefully how it changes. But can I read two sentences?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. This one really just went right to me because, as you mentioned, she's going through some things at home, some changes at home, but she's learned that by being quiet and being good, people can be happy, and she likes to make people happy. And so, this was the part. So she did what she always did when it felt like things were overwhelming for everyone around her. She shoved her own worry deep down inside and reached for the soft smile that almost always got her one in return. I was like, oh, the inner people pleaser in me is just there on the page.
Yeah, and I think I thought it was it was like intrinsic to her character, but I think also sort of as like people assigned female at birth, that's sort of what you're taught to do, or just sort of how society conditions you. And it's not even always on purpose, like with your parents or your family, but it's sort of just like a mantle, I think, that a lot of women take up, often to their detriment. And it starts, when you're young.
Yes. Yes. But thankfully, throughout this entire experience at summer camp, which really is transformative in a lot of different ways, we see a change in her and her character and her voice and what she's willing to say.
Yeah.
And again, I won't talk about it at the end, but there is a scene at the end where she's just really honest with an adult in her life of what she wished and wanted and needed. And I was like, you go, look at you. Like, I was just so proud of her and proud of him.
Oh.
Yes, I was very invested in her throughout this story.
Thank you. It was such a nice scene to write. I think for any character that you write, you want them to have like a moment where they have changed and gotten to a better place. Especially I think writing for kids, because you just, want the best for them. Especially after I put them through a whole book of like scares and things. It's like you just want them to have something good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The other part I wanted to bring up that I really loved was the friendships that were developing in the cabin, and in particular, Naomi was trying to figure out, who she was and how much she says and how much she doesn't say and how much she's overthinking with everything. But there's one other character that kind of teams up, get in a little trouble together, maybe speak out, when people aren't looking. But I really loved the inclusion that you have there of American Sign Language and being able to communicate with each other. And I wanted to ask you about that, of how that came to be a part of that character's trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Jackie, who was hard of hearing, and wears hearing aids, it was sort of how she came fully fledged to me. But also, I've been trying to learn sign language, which has been fun but difficult. And I thought of just about how it's a form of sort of nonverbal communication where you're able to express yourself, but it also involves a lot of like facial expressions. And it is a language of its own. There are lots of different types of sign language as well. Um, and so with Naomi, the way that she struggles to talk, I thought like having her with Jackie who can speak as well, but the way that they can communicate through sign language and connect in that way that doesn't exactly have to be verbal, but consists of so many like nonverbal cues, from finger spelling and everything to expression. Um, was really helpful for both of them. Jackie, just because of the type of character that she is, a little bit of a troublemaker, like doesn't want to be bothered with people. And then Naomi, because she often struggles with expressing herself verbally. Um, I also thought, the sort of representation that is important. I like representation in all forms in all of my books. But also it wasn't sort of any sort of conscious decision in that sense. It's just sort of how Jackie came to me. And so I was very excited to dive deeper into that because it also made me have to do more research and like think about my own self and like any internal like ableism or things like that. And also how accessible or inaccessible certain things are, from like captions, um, to all sorts of things. And so when writing Jackie, it was interesting to sort of see her point of view and how angry she is, um, and how she plays against Naomi. And all of it was like really, really interesting and nice to write because they have a fun, relationship that I think if they weren't cabin mates, I'm not sure that their personalities would have allowed them to meet. So it was nice to get to pair them up.
Well, I guess that is the nice thing about a summer camp setting or a setting like it, right? There are some unlikely friendships that may develop or just the opportunity to meet new people, which, Naomi was petrified of, not knowing how she would be received, but ended up forming some really great unexpected friendships. And especially between her and Jackie, just I felt like they really needed each other. They each had something that offered the other girl something she was looking for. And it was just such a nice friendship.
Exactly, and thank you. And I think that's the fun about summer camp too, is that, or at least certain summer camps like a sleepaway, you can't go home, so you have to figure out how to like deal with any interpersonal conflict or um, things like that because you're stuck there until your parents come and get you.
Yes. Yes. And that was in my mind as well. I remember my school trip. It was not a week, and it doesn't sound nearly as fun as it was yours. It was just one day, and I remember being so excited until the day it arrived, and I thought,
Oh.
"Yeah, what if? What if this? What if that?" And so I could totally relate to, um, her reservations, especially when one of our other cabin mates said, "Well, maybe you'll be like a lifer. Maybe you'll be here the whole time," which alludes to a little of the spookiness that's coming. But yeah, there may be some hesitation, but just being immersed like that really gave those characters the opportunities to connect and grow and change and develop in ways that they wouldn't, while also having this really cool slash spooky slash what is going on kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's fun too because it's like in the woods. You're not just like down the street from your house. Like you're pretty far away and it's nothing but trees. Also no cell phones. I think that was one of the more fun things to write because I feel like cell phones can solve so many problems, especially nowadays, like in horror movies and all sorts of things. But if you just can't have them, then that's helpful.
Yeah. I think that's a lesson for the young readers and the adult readers that may be sharing their books with them too.
True.
So, as you think about middle graders getting this book in their hands, we've talked about so many of the wonderful themes that they may be able to connect with, to see themselves inside of. What is your hope that readers will walk away with after reading Camp Twisted Pine?
Yeah, I feel like my hope is sort of something similar to what I said earlier, sort of like doing it scared, and that like Naomi's sort of petrified to come to this camp to do a lot of the things that she has to end up doing, to sort of help people that she cares about. But she does it anyway. And it not only helps her grow, but it helps a lot of the people that she knows and even people that she doesn't know. Um, yeah, and just sort of finding that sort of well of courage inside yourself to do something that might frighten you. But also, I think the importance of nature. That trip in the 6th grade was a big eye-opening experience for me, and I still like to try to get out into nature when I can. I do live in a city, so it's a little harder, but that just makes it more rewarding when I'm able to. And I sort of came up with the idea for Camp Twisted Pine when I was, on Roosevelt Island, which is this small little wooded island, in Virginia that's really nice. And, yeah, just think about how the things that we as humans do sort of affect the environment and the ways that we can sort of help keep spaces safe. Like the Pine Barrens in New Jersey is a protected land. Um, and hopefully we have more protected land all over the US and all over the world. But also that it's important to experience and sort of immerse ourselves in if possible. And even if, we don't live down the street from some woods, like just getting outside and getting fresh air is so beneficial. Like I love video games and I love YouTube, but when I get outside, I do feel a lot better, and it is helpful. Like if I'm having creator's block or something, just to breathe that fresh air and like see some flowers. And if I'm having a bad day, it's like, wow, flowers are really all types of colors. And so, yeah, I think that was important. And I think that's something that Naomi realizes important too, even when she's feeling scared.
Right. I also loved, I hadn't mentioned yet, but I am a huge notebooker. I hoard them. I
Mm.
have stacks of them. I use them from all sorts of different reasons. And I love that she had something like a nature notebook where she was writing down her observations and things she saw. I instantly loved her for that.
Thank you. Yeah, she struggles with the communication, but she does love to observe and like be present and to write things down. And I think nature, like I am a big planner person and I use it as like my planner slash scrapbook slash notebook. And so it's just full to bursting of things. And I wanted her to have sort of her own thing, but tied to the things that she loves.
Yeah. Okay. I have to sneak in one last question since you mentioned that you
Yeah.
also like your notebooks. Do you have a favorite kind of notebook?
Oh, I know moleskins are so popular, and I do like them with the right pen, but actually, I like what is this one? Oh, it's the one's called the decomposition book.
Mhm.
I just like the designs on them, and they're really cool, and I have one for, like, all my D&D notes. But if we're talking about planners, I really love a passion planner. They're just gorgeous, and they're, like, huge, and I can do all sorts of things with them, and it helps me organize my life, which I love.
Yes. Oh, I love all of those notebooks. I have all of those notebooks slash planners for different reasons, but you said the right pen. So I promise this will be my last
Yeah.
question. What is the right pen for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually have really bad handwriting. So I guess my favorite pen is like, what is this? Oh, it's like a Papermate Flare. It's like a felt type of pen because I write quickly and very tiny too. And so it helps like make my strokes like bigger and slightly more legible than than like a fine pen does.
Mhm. There's just something about the right notebook and the right writing utensil that makes me really happy. So thank you for indulging me in those
So,
questions.
no problem.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today to talk about Camp Twisted Pine. It was out in September. We're now in November. So it is the perfect setting. It's fall. It may not be summer camp
Exactly.
weather, but it is kind of let's get snuggled in and get spooked kind of weather. So
You can like go to a cabin, be in the woods, like perfect for that. Yeah, and Halloween really is a mindset, and, like, spookiness is a mindset, so it's all year round.
That's right. That's right. So listeners, it's perfect. It's the perfect time to pick it up. So Ciera, thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank
telling
you.
us about the book, sharing more about you and your work. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I will see you inside the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.